Hello everyone, welcome back to our Maya 2020 tutorial series on character rigging. We're working on rigging this dude here, this construction worker. We're going to continue on. Last lesson we went ahead and created our legs, and this lesson we're going to focus on creating the controls for the legs. We're going to create a pull vector for the knee, and we're going to be also creating a reverse foot lock, which will help with the foot roll, and a set driven key that will control the foot roll. So there's a lot we're going to get into. Since I have it kind of in view right now, I did want to address something really quick. You can see how there's this circle here. Now this circle here doesn't always pop up, but what this is the circle showing you that this is the radius that the rotate plane solver is using as a pivot. Now you can't see it unless you actually have the IK handle selected, and the IK handle we created in the last lesson. You can see there's these little handles sticking off to the side here. So if I click on it, you can see then that the rotate plane solver is there, but if I click away, it disappears. Just want to let you guys know that's what that is. And if you click on the single chain IKs, which was different than the rotate plane solvers, you can see it says SC for single chain. They don't have those big circles that are the rotation plane solver. So just a little heads up on what that is. All right, so let's go ahead and dive on in. So let's first start out by creating that reverse foot lock I was telling you about. We're going to go back into creating ourselves some joints, and we're going to jump into our side view here. Okay. Now this is a little bit weird because, like, you know, we basically want to do is to be able to pivot off of our heel, but since our joint comes down here and starts at the ankle, it makes it hard to do that. So this is an old trick for rigging, and it works really well. But what you do is instead you start here in the back, and you're going to put a joint right here. You're going to hold down shift. That'll make it to where the next joint will be exactly horizontal with this heel joint here, and we'll click right underneath this toe joint. Okay. Next we're going to create a joint, and it's going to be underneath this foot joint right here. So I'm going to hold down. I'm just going to click right in here, and then I'm going to click one more time underneath the ankle. Okay, I'm going to press return, and that'll complete the chain. Now the chain is, the radiuses are kind of large, right? I mean, compared to these ones, it makes it where it's kind of hard to see what we're clicking on because these joints are almost overlapping. In some cases they are. So what we're going to do is I'm actually going to adjust the radius on these joints so it's easier to deal with the reverse foot lock. So I'm going to go, since I have this joint here, which is the top of the hierarchy since it's the first one we created, I'm going to go to, let's see here, select and hierarchy, and that will make sure that we have all the joints selected. So when I do to one, it'll do to all of them. I'm going to change the radius from 0.527 down to 0.2. Okay, so now these are a lot smaller, much more manageable, easier to deal with. Okay, so that's good. All right, so now we need to make sure this thing is positioned correctly. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my perspective view, and I'm going to select the bottom joint down here, this heel joint, or what's going to be the heel joint, and I'm just going to move this over to where it's right underneath my other joints. So that's pretty much what I want. Okay. Now I'm gonna go and make sure that everything's named properly. So I'm gonna start out with, and this is a little bit different naming convention. So I don't use the BN, even though they are technically joints. I'm just going to use reverse foot lock. So RL for reverse lock, and it's going to be heel. Okay. Actually, I forgot one thing. Reverse lock heel left. Okay, and then this one here is going to be reverse lock toe left. Reverse lock foot left. And then reverse foot lock ankle left. There we go. Okay, so that's all named good. Let's go ahead and also just run our mirroring tool. So we're going to go to skeleton, mirror joints, left to right, hit apply. Oop, but I had the wrong one. I had up here. I want this one. There we go. So it pops it right over onto the opposite side. It's already right where it needs to be. Perfect. Okay, and let's just check. Go ahead and check. Everything went from left to right. That looks good as well up here. Okay, we're set. Okay. Now I want to look at creating some controls for this right now, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and go to create NURBS primitives, and we're going to create ourselves a circle. And I use NURBS primitive circles for one reason, or one reason only, is that they don't render. So that makes it to where, just like our joints, we can have all the controls we want, and as we're animating, we don't have to worry about them being in the way of the render. But on top of that, I do like them to be visually accurate to some extent, so I like to go through and make them somewhat fit the foot, which makes them easier to deal with. So I'm going to go ahead and go to where the inputs are, NURBS circle. I'm going to go ahead and change the sections. Let's move it up to like 10. And I'm going to go to control vertex, which is the object or a component of this object. So right mouse button, control vertex. And that'll give me these little pink dots here that I can go ahead and move in to fit around the foot. Okay, so that's pretty good in the front. Let's see about the back. Okay, so let's bring the back in a little bit. That looks pretty good. Okay, back to object mode. Now, controls aren't like joints. We can freeze the transforms, and we actually do want to do that. But I want to make sure that it's pretty much level with this. I don't want it to be underneath it. Okay, scale this out just a little bit. It's pretty much level with it. I'm going to freeze the transforms. So we go to poly modeling, this little icon right here. It looks like a snowflake that will freeze the transforms. Now they're all zeroed out and single ones on the scale. That's what we want. Okay. Next, we want to look at constraining some of these IK handles so we can move these guys around, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select this joint here, shift select this IK handle. I'm going to go to constrain, and I'm going to open up the point constraint submenu and make sure that maintain offsets is turned on. Otherwise, it's going to make this IK handle jump to where this joint's location is. So if I turn this on, now I can hit apply. There we go. And you want to make sure that the IK handle is what was constrained. So you can see how it says IK. Make sure it's not the joint. You want the IK handle. And you also, so joint here or joint here. The order of selection here is important. It's got to be the last thing you selected is going to be the thing that's being constrained. Okay. So now that these is locked in, I can go ahead and test this out first. Let's go ahead and just move this up, and it's already giving me some of what I want. You can see how it's moving my leg. That's good, but not the toes. We still got to work on those. But as I go forward, I like to kind of make sure that things are locked in place. So I'm going to make sure that these guys here don't accidentally get animated over. So if you were, as an animator, a junior animator, was to accidentally grab this IK handle and try to animate it, it would then break the connections in here, creating a blend between the animation and the IK handle, which would disconnect it unless you activated it, which makes it to where it's kind of a problem trying to troubleshoot that. So we like to just make sure that you don't touch this as a junior animator. So I'm just going to select those two, or these three here. I'm just going to go and say lock selected. That way you can't screw with it. Okay. We're going to basically do the same thing going down the chain here. So I'm going to select this joint down here, which is underneath this IK handle. And I'm just going to, again, shift select this IK handle. And I'm going to go to constrain and point again. Okay, so that's good. Same thing. I want to make sure this is locked. So lock selected. That's good. Next, we're going to do the toe. Shift select the IK above that. And then I'm going to go to constrain and point again. And again, with this IK handle, I'm going to lock selected. So now we can't accidentally animate and break any of those things. And let's see here, see how this works. So if I go ahead and move this, that works out great. I have full movement of my foot. That's perfect. If I was to animate this, you would see how now it can control like a foot rise, which is mainly the reason why we create this reverse foot lock. But we can also then come to this heel and then have it pivot backwards. That's also great. Okay. Now, how do we want to control this thing? So we can control it in a couple different ways. We can control it with a parent constraint, but I find parenting usually works better than a parent constraint for this particular one. So what I'm going to do is just parent this reverse foot lock to this controller. So wherever this controller goes, the reverse foot lock goes as well, which then drives the rest of the leg. Okay, so I'm going to select the control, shift select the joint chain. I'm sorry, I reversed that. Joint chain first, then shift select the control, press P for parent. So now the reverse foot lock is part of this guy, which you wouldn't really want to control by rotating it. Really, you want to control just by moving this up and down. The rotation part of this is the reason why we create the reverse foot lock, so you don't have to deal with that controller doing any of this dipping and diving. You can do just keep it flat and just do forward movement up and down, and that takes care of all of it. Okay, so that's good. Let's go ahead and make sure our control for our foot's named properly. So we're going to call this one control underscore foot left. Okay. Now I can borrow this control right here and bring it over for the other foot as well, right? So I can just select this one, hit Control D. Now since there's that reverse foot lock parented in here, I don't really need that in there, so I'm just going to select that one and delete it. Okay, so we just bring it right over here. There we go. And I'll just freeze the transforms on this one and change the name from left to right. Okay. Now, if I was to want this to be moving, do I want it to be pivoting from the middle, or do I want to pivot from the back? You can always move the pivot point of your control back to where this is pivoting from, which would make a little bit more sense if you were wanting to use it this way. I don't really recommend it because we're going to use a set-driven key that will do this work for you. But if you were to want to move this pivot point back to where the heel is to have a little bit better control over the foot without using the set-driven key, just simply press the D key, and then you can vertex snap this one onto the end where this joint is. Okay, and then we press D to end it again, and now through the parent we then have control over the foot in the back. So the audio you hear in the background is my son taking my new puppy outside, so disregard the background noise, please. All right, so this one's good. Let's go ahead and make sure this one's also good. All right, so we have to parent this one into this one. Now I know this is the reverse order that we were doing before, but I can then take this reverse foot lock joint, shift select the control here, press P for parent. Now it is parented in with this control. Okay, so that's good. Now I want this joint to control this IK handle. So I'm going to select the joint, shift select the IK handle, and again constraint and point. And then we're going to lock this channel out. So lock selected. We're going to select this joint, shift select this IK handle, and we're going to do constraint point. We're going to select this joint, shift select this IK handle, and do constraint point. All right, so that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and test this out. That's good. Yep, that works. Okay. So that's good. That means that both sides of the feet are working. One thing I want to deal with though is sometimes, you know, the knee position is a little bit unpredictable. Right now the knee's going okay, but you can see how as it goes this way and gets kind of weird, sometimes the knee wants to go all over the place. Now since I have the knees already kind of bent like this actually helps a lot with the issue of needing to pull back to begin with, because it already has the bend in it. But if your feet are, or your legs are completely straight up and down, then you definitely have some issues with what's called buckling, where the knee doesn't know which side it's supposed to go to on the plane. And by plane, I mean that when we create this IK handle, where we had it start up here and went down here and use this joint here, it knows that this is a plane. So this being the center point of a triangle, and these 2 points making up the other part of it. So if this was completely straight up and down, it would be considered a line, and it wouldn't know which side it's supposed to go on. So sometimes you end up having the knee flip around to the back side. So the pull vector will help with that as well. But since I built this to where the knees were already bent, it should make it to where that's not as big of a deal. But we're going to go through how to set up a pull vector anyways, because it's good to have control over the knees in certain cases. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another circle. In the past, I used to use text to do this, but I feel like the text can kind of be cumbersome, and they don't really help that much. So I'm just going to go ahead and create myself another circle. I'm looking at my time here. I don't think I have time for doing the set-driven key. We might have to save that for our next lesson. But that's okay. We'll finish off our pull vectors here. So let's go ahead and put a 90-degree value here. And we're going to vertex snap this onto where this joint's at, which is right there, and that's good. We're going to duplicate this one. We're going to put it on the other side as well. So we'll say right there. That's good. And then we're going to select both controls, and we're going to move them out in front of the knee about right there. We don't want them to be right on top of it, otherwise the solve doesn't work super well. Okay, so that's good right there. And we're going to freeze the transforms, and we'll go ahead and name them. So this one will be, and actually let's make them a little bit smaller. Freeze the transforms. And I don't know, I kind of want to make them a little bit different before I get it. Just going to scale these ones. There we go. That'll just make it to where as things are being moved around, we can tell what's going on with them. Just makes them a little bit more unique than having a simple circle there. Let's deselect these guys. Okay, so that's good. Now this is just aesthetics. These don't, changing the vertexes on this doesn't change how the rig works at all. This is just helps me kind of understand as controls are moving around what goes to what and what's happening with all my controls. Okay, so let's go ahead and name these things. So we're going to call this one control knee left. This one's going to be called control knee right. Okay, so that's good. Let's go ahead and create the pull vectors now. So you're going to select the IK handle, which is this one down here. Then you're going to select the corresponding pull vector. Actually, I think I might reverse that. Control first, then the IK handle. And then we're going to go to skeleton. And it's not an IK handle. We're creating a pull vector. I think it's underneath constraint, actually. No. Oh, yeah, there it is. Pull vector. Been a little bit. Sorry, guys. All right, so then it'll have this little line that'll come out here. And this line is kind of like the circle. You won't see this unless you actually have the IK selected. But this just tells you that this is how it knows which direction it needs to face. So now if I go ahead and select this and move it around, you can see that it actually has control over which way the knee is facing, which is great. Okay, so same thing over here. We're going to select the control first, shift select the IK handle, and go to constraint and pull vector. Okay, so now that that's all set up, that's good. Now it depends on who is telling you how your rig is supposed to be built, but I like to have my pull vectors be parented into my knee control. That way, as I move my knee forward, my knee can't possibly cross over where my pull vector is at. It will always push my pull vector a little bit further forward, and then I'll have independent control over the child object inside the parenting hierarchy. So if I select this guy here, shift select control below it, hit P for parent. Now as I move this guy, it then also moves the pull vector, keeping it equal distance spacing from where it should be at. And I'll still, if I was to move it over here, I can still grab this and control how the knee's moving. So just makes it a little bit easier as an animator to have that in there. So I'm going to select this one over here and do the same thing. Just shift select this one and press P for parent. Okay, there we go. That's good. All right, so last thing I want to do is I want to be able to tell which side of the model is, or which side my controls are at. So as my controls running around, they aren't just a bunch of blue controls that are hard to see and I can't tell which side goes to which side. Especially these floating knee ones and elbow ones, it starts to get kind of confusing. So what I like to do is to create layers, which helps attach color schemes to which side goes to which side. So I'm going to select these two and go to create a new layer. This one will be called control left. I'm sorry, this one's to the right. And I'm going to use this red color here, or maybe this red color here. It's a little brighter. There we go. So now when this is turned off, you can see the controls very easily rather than these dark blue ones. And I know this will be, everything that's left will be these red ones. Okay. So same thing for the right ones here. I'm going to select these two, create another layer. This will be called control right. I'm sorry, not right, left. Sorry, my brain is not working apparently this morning since it is still relatively early. Okay, we're going to hit save, and actually I forgot to attach a color to this one. Let's go ahead and make this one, let's see what this bright green here looks like. That works, I like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and save our scene. So file, save scene, continue. All right, so we're still underneath the rigging. All right, so this is where we're going to end it for today, guys. Next lesson, we'll get into creating the set-driven key, and then we'll also start creating the spine and attach these legs to it. All right, so thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next lesson.